So, did you miss my 100 videos? Today we are traveling to Asia. With the recent growth of K-pop and K-dramas, K-fashion has also been gaining a lot of popularity on the other side of the planet, and I think we're all here for it. So without further ado, let's get into today's history class. Let's just ignore the fact that it's ridiculous that this is supposed to be my microphone, but this is my actual microphone, so I have to be holding two things in order for your audio to be good. Okay, so to give you a little bit of context, in 1910, Japan annexed Korea to its empire, which had a huge influence on their fashion. People started to lose a lot of their traditional style, being strongly influenced by the Japanese and Western cultures. The opera bag around the wrist was one of them, along with fedoras that were worn by boys. Men were wearing suits and women were sporting new hairstyles, such as the Gibson girl. The flapper dress, which might remind you of my other video, was also very popular here. In 1930, Elsa Schiaparelli introduced more color, and Koreans discovered that hot pink was really flattering to them. The way I phrased it is just really weird, like Koreans discovered that this color was very flattering to them, no, it's like nowadays, a color becomes more trendy and we like to see it in ourselves and so we use it more. Anyways, here are some clips of the 30s street style in Korea. And I wonder if these boys were actually wearing pink and not purple, but the person who added color to these clips wasn't aware of this trend, because I think that's very likely. In 1940, the World War II brought in more military style, and clothes became more plain and dark. In 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, which created horrible economic conditions and obviously brought new styles. The swimsuit began to be on the spotlight, and in 1955, a women's magazine called Yuwon offered a new column named Fashion Mode. First fashion shows were actually created at this time, and fashion design started to become a real career. In the 1960s, the Korean government encouraged the use of natural and economic fabric materials like wool and banned the importation and sale of other countries' goods. Miniskirts were made famous by the singer Yoon Bok-wi, and Western musicians like the Beatles also set a lot of influences. The 1960s saw an initial major modernization of the country due to the growing literacy and better economic conditions. As more job opportunities were available, fashion became more versatile and comfortable. In the 1970s, there was a huge transition in fashion trends as the normal consumer became the new trendsetter rather than the designers. Fashion became a symbol of protest for the youth who rocked skinny pants, miniskirts, long hair, punk clothing, and bold accessories such as big circle earrings and sunglasses. Hemlines for women became shorter. Fashion-related corporations such as malls and multi-brand stores started appearing, and we can't forget about the hippie culture, who also brought flared trousers, wedge shoes, and even shorter miniskirts. This was indeed the birth of street style, because for the first time, street fashion inspired designers and not vice versa. In the 1980s, there was a huge shift brought by the popularization of casual wear. That meant t-shirts, jumpers and jeans, mini dresses with shoulder pads, and Western brands like Reebok actually became popular. Women's rising presence in the workforce was actually a huge boost to women's workwear fashion. There were two other events that deeply influenced fashion at this time: the introduction of color television in South Korea and the 1988 Olympics, which brought an unprecedented amount of Western products such as Nike, Reebok, and Adidas to arrive en masse. Sporty looks, denim on denim, baggy pants, t-shirts, and bomber jackets were definitely some of the things that stood out the most. And we can't forget about the 80s disco boom, who also happened in Korea. In the 1990s, the entry of K-pop set its perpetual print on K-fashion and K-beauty. The grunge aesthetic was adopted by the youth, named resistance fashion. It was in 1997 that the Korean economy took another serious hit, and to cope with that, the government decided to invest more in the entertainment industry. That made the idols of K-pop stand out for their style and caused the rise of Korean designer brands. The 90s also marked the return of the handbook in a more modern key. As the fashion industry grew in that decade, Korea Vogue was founded. In the 2000s, you're probably going to see a lot of trends that you recognize from being popular right now. The truth is, when I finished doing my research, I understood the impact that the numerous historical events that we've covered in this video have had in Korea and how they've moved its fashion in a more Western direction, if that's even a thing. That left me thirsty for making a video where we dive further away in the timeline to look at the traditional Korean fashion that ruled before the 18th century. Just like I did with my shoes video that literally covered the evolution of shoes since the Stone Age. But regardless of these thoughts, I think, according to my comment section, most of you guys will really dig 2000s fashion here. Which brings us to the present. Suits, baby doll dresses, slacks, pattern ties, these are only a few of the trends that are coming everyone's way. Athleisure wear is rising. Blush tones, bringing a romantic and retro vibe to outfits, are also here to stay. Big shades, ribbed shirts, puffed sleeves, all types of hats, mini bags, chains, and cargo pants are also very trendy. Whether it be clothes or cosmetics, the global market has been tremendously impacted by Koreans' influence. More and more international businesses are beginning to stock their shelves with Korean brands, and I think it's relevant to notion that the traditional handbook still remains the biggest symbol of Korean fashion and is still commonly used in festivals and special celebrations. Someone who doesn't consume a lot of K-culture, I don't really watch K-dramas or listen to K-pop, I cannot deny that K-fashion is here to stay and is growing and growing to be the biggest set trender at the moment. I've interviewed so many Korean people in my street style videos and they always have rocking styles. So comment down below your thoughts about this. If you have any K-dramas or K-pop that you want to recommend, I definitely want to make the comment section down below a place to share things about the Korean culture, and I'm planning on doing this with other parts of the world. So yeah, any thoughts that you have, leave them down below. I hope you enjoyed this little history session. And now I'm gonna have lunch because my belly is hurting. I'm hungry. I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of struggles while making this video to find trustworthy and relevant information, as well as enough images and royalty-free Korean vintage music. So if you have any recommendations about that to improve the quality of this series, please shoot me a DM or comment down below. And I think that's all for today. Bye!